Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome back for this live session. Very excited to close this global live event with Aileen, who I'm sure you know. She's the co-founder of the Global Legal Hackathon, and she's doing quite a lot of things. And I will let Aileen introduce her better. But I just want to say before that it's a great pleasure to have you, Aileen, today. And Aileen is going to make a call to action for more global legal innovation. But before I do that, maybe Aileen, you want to say a few more words about what you do, and not the entire spectrum, but because there's much more than the Global Legal Hackathon that you do. So we'd love to hear more about that as
well. Sure. Well, so yes, I will not do the entire spectrum. So first of all, thanks for having me on this show, Tessa, or live broadcast. What do you call it, a show or a live broadcast? What do you?
We call it a show. Is kind of nice. I like the idea of a show. I might steal that one.
Okay, so thanks for having me on your show then. So my name's Aileen, and most recently I'm known for the Global Legal Hackathon. And that was really just this global phenomenon that you'll learn more about in what I'm going to be talking about today. And and so I do digital strategy, and I currently work with blockchain for law company called Integra Ledger. And I do this through my digital strategy firm called Fractal Scale. So that's why you'll see a 3-pronged present on my LinkedIn account, which confuses a lot of people. And so my background is in legal strategy and innovation, and with a particular focus on the legal tech and innovation space.
Fantastic. And so today you're going to be sharing a presentation about global legal innovation, and I really look forward to hear more. And just so live viewers know, you can type in the chat box some comments and questions for Aileen, which I will be monitoring. And for replay viewers, well, stay tuned, because there will be ways for you to connect and engage with Aileen. So better watch the entire presentation. So the floor is yours, and I'll be in the background in order to assist if needs be. Okay?
Great. Yeah, and Tessa as well is involved in a bunch of different amazing things. So Tessa, I would invite you as well to jump in here and add anything that you might find helpful throughout the presentation. So I'll dive right in. So no one would deny that everything has a legal context, right? So you write an email, depending on who you send it to and what it's about, that has a legal context. You post something to social media, or you buy a sword on World of Warcraft. A lot of people aren't actually aware of how much legal context is actually embedded in your day-to-day online life. So for example, the average North American, it might just be actually Americans, so maybe not Canadians as well, actually estimate a value of over $30,000 in digital assets. And this becomes a huge problem when people pass away and their families are trying to assess, their assets and their distribution of their estate. So incredible legal context there that most people aren't even aware of. And so even just something as simple as crossing the street, in terms of the laws of the crosswalks, and what governs when people can and can't drive by, tons of legal context. Even just buying your daily cup of coffee has tons of bylaws around what your coffee joint can and can't do in terms of signage on the sidewalk. And it's really quite pervasive. And so legislative systems, and I don't think anyone would argue with me in saying this, legislative systems really are the glue of our coexistence and how we actually work together and function our day-to-day lives. And everything has this legal context. It's almost like this energy matrix or mass network of information that is weaved throughout everything we do and all of our actions. Yet, all of these things are incredibly...
Just sorry to interrupt, Aileen, to make sure, if you have your presentation, we don't see it actually. So are you sharing your screen? Are you meant to have the presentation now?
Not yet. So what I was going to
Okay,
do,
sorry. Fantastic. No, that's
yeah,
fantastic.
so I can send it around after if people want. But yeah, so what I'm going to do is just basically run over things, and
Sure,
then when there's
fantastic.
when there's graphics to help address what I'm talking about, then I'm gonna screen share those and throw them up.
Great. Sorry for interrupting.
No worries. Yeah, and so all of these systems and things are incredibly disconnected and siloed right now. And if we're thinking about traditional design methodology or something like that, everybody would agree that these things aren't agile, they're not iterative, they're not open, they're not cyclical, and they're certainly not user-centric. And so this actually creates major issues for transformation and progress. And so information can't flow, people can't connect, departments can't interoperate, and systems can't function well. And there are law firms, and if some of you work actually on some of these committees and things like that, it'd be awesome if you weighed in here. So different corporations and law firms are creating innovation units, or innovation committees, or whatever you want to call them, but they often only are inclusive of one group of stakeholders, and don't necessarily include also the technologists and these other important stakeholders. And so I would argue that what we need to do is take this global view for transformation. So actually looking at all of these silos and the pieces in these silos, and actually assessing them and then bringing them back together in terms of what the common goal is. So we don't have all of these disparate conversations. And so let's dive into a look here at legal innovation globally right now, and what I think I will actually share this. No, that's all right. We'll get into the next one here. So yeah, so legal innovation globally. I mean, everybody, you can probably all attest to this, that there's a lot of buzzwords around AI and blockchain and all these things, and real things are happening. Like, for example, I work with through Integra, the Global Legal Blockchain Consortium, and there are now over 30 members. And top tiered firms like Dentons and Oric and Baker and Hostetler are actually members. And to be a member, the qualification is to actually build out a POC using blockchain technology. And so in a lot of ways, this actually speaks to I wouldn't say how ready, but at least the level of willingness now to have these conversations in the legal industry. So another big one that a lot of people see, and Margaret Hagan has popularized, and Tessa, I know you do a lot of work in this area as well, is design thinking methodology and bringing that to the legal industry. And so I will do a share screen here quick. Tessa, you'll let me know once you can see it, yeah?
Yeah, I'll let you know. It's coming. Yeah, it's coming up. It's looking good. I can see the slide now.
Great.
Fantastic.
Great. Yeah, so this is just a very simple image to help illustrate, the very basics of this design thinking methodology, from understanding and observing through to prototyping and actually testing. So after testing is actually integrating and implementation. So just keep this particular framework in mind as we move through here. Yeah, and so the Richard Suskins and the George Beatons of the world are also, they may not actually define it as design thinking methodology, but if you look at a lot of the things they talk about in a lot of their work, it's quite clear that these principles, or just this idea of carrying something through ideation through to actual testing and implementation, is becoming a popularized process in the legal industry as well. So what about actual adoption, right? So there was a study in 2016 done by the International Technology Association, and they actually found that 53% of all firms reported larger tech budgets from 2015 to 2016, which is promising, right? So, I mean, if we step back and look at that, you might think that that's an indication that the industry, is warming up, but they found that actually those budgets were going to cybersecurity and infrastructural things like governance and business recovery concerns, as well as like security compliance requirements and things like this, as opposed to, actual new technology adoption or innovation. And in fact, actually 87% of those respondents indicated that they were not actually considering AI technology adoption. And when I learned that, that was actually a surprise to me. I'd be interested to know if that's, as surprising to others that might be listening right now as well. And so this is great. So there's motions and there's movements going in this direction. But what a lot of people, there's a lot of people freaking out, and we have to ask ourselves, are we going to take it too far? So I'm going to show you another image here of a little robot. So hopefully you guys can see this guy. So he's
perfect.
Okay, great. Yeah, they're very, very simple slides. I'm just showing some images here to help, facilitate what I'm talking about. So this guy, I mean, I don't know, like I go back and forth between whether I think he's cute or creepy. I can't really decide. But he is actually the robot that the Chinese government is actually using right now to deal with basic casework. So, parking tickets and things like this. And so, I mean, a lot of people are actually worried. A lot of people are worried that, these robots and all these things that we're talking about implementing, their concerns are that they lack compassion and, they don't make for a proper judicial system because of this, and their accuracy is off, and all of our jobs are being lost, and all of these things. The list goes on, but actually that's not the case. So very quickly, and I'm not going to dive in here, but there's actually studies to show that human beings actually learn compassion as well, in a similar how a machine might be taught, to exhibit signs of compassion. And their machine learning accuracy has been proven to be, beyond, well beyond human capacities. And the fact is that more jobs are being made. And everything with what Legal Creatives and Tessa is doing is, a testament to that as well. Like there's just so much happening out there that is new. And so we don't have to worry too much about that. So it's clear that, at least in some places, the industry is ready to have these conversations. But is it truly global? So the Global Legal Hackathon, and I'll jump in here to another slide. Hope this isn't making anyone dizzy.
It's perfect. We are following you.
Okay, good. I hope it works out all right. Yeah, so the Global Legal Hackathon, or GLH, 2018, as everybody recognizes it, was this global phenomenon that happened, and it brought the industry together across. This map is pretty impactful, actually, and so Tessa would have been right around here somewhere.
Where it's cold.
Sorry?
Somewhere where it's very cold, in the northern part of of Canada.
Yes. Yeah, so Tessa organized or was one of the hosts for the GLH, and she hosted, yes, in Montreal, and did an amazing job of it. And yeah, so this map here shows the breadth of it. So it was in 40 cities and 22 countries across 6 continents, which is, yes, as you can imagine, incredibly. I mean, that's huge. And in addition, it actually went on to let me know, Tess, if you guys can still see the screen here. Switching things over.
Yes, yes. It's great,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so for several weeks in a row, actually, the Global Legal Hackathon was actually the leading term across legal innovation news. And it even beat out blockchain, which was supposedly the #1 term for 2018 in legal innovation. So, I mean, that's just a testament to the digital age that we live in and how connected our world actually can be. You know, because these were all digital platforms, from my understanding, where this information was gathered. And so I'm hopping back over now again. And so the crazy thing about this whole thing is that a lot of these locations, it was actually the first time that they were getting involved in legal innovation or even approaching something like a hackathon in the legal industry in those locations. I mean, even in Stockholm, Sweden, even in Stockholm, which is actually on the Global Innovation Index, the second ranking country, hadn't, as far as they're aware, hadn't actually had any kind of legal innovation event, and certainly not at that scale. And so I'll do one last screen share here to show you these teams, what I'm about to show you. So these teams were, I mean, impressive in and of themselves, just the scale and the magnitude and the geography of these teams here. But these were only the first place teams from each of those 40 host locations. So you can just imagine the depth of, you know, the amount of teams and participants and things that were happening, considering that each of these were actually the first place out of a pool of several other teams at each host location. I'm just going to zip through a couple things here because we're running a bit short on time. So there are people in the industry who have argued, and not wrongly actually, that hackathons are, you know, kind of fluffy, and, you know, they're just sort of these like technology and innovation events that are, you know, sort of these parties or these opportunities to socialize. And I wouldn't actually disagree with that. But my, you know, sort of the beginning of my call to action here is that they can be so much more than that. And they're really, they suit the first part of the understanding, ideation, and collaboration component of what needs to happen to properly assess and, you know, test and work through a particular problem point. And, you know, hackathons are the perfect playing ground for that. But beyond that, and here's sort of, you know, where my bigger call to action comes from. Beyond that, I believe it's important to you know, take a step back and look at this whole thing. Look at the Global Legal Hackathon. Look at, you know, what groups like Legal Creatives are doing. You know, Legal Hackers. You know, there's all these various groups that are focusing on all these different problem areas and bringing together these communities. And it's very, very clear now that we can all collaborate simultaneously, you know, across the literally across the world, you know, and be connected digitally, you know, to work on various problem areas. And so, looking at the Global Legal Hackathon, again, we saw firms partnering with each other at host locations. That's not something you hear of. Corporations were partnering with nonprofits. CIOs and senior executives were spending their entire weekend, engaged in these hackathons, at various host locations. And we saw hundreds of lawyers come together with hundreds of developers from across the globe. And so what I'd like to leave you with then is, yes, this global call to action to look at all of that information and to look at this global connectedness that we now have, and to centralize, and not in the toxic, bad, sort of cryptocurrency space faux pas way of saying it, but centralize around particular problem sets, and work on bringing the world together to address those things. There's two particular problem areas that I think are in the legal space that are well suited to this kind of global collaboration. And so, those are universal base income and identities for all. And so, and so I would leave you with those, and just to encourage everyone to look at what happened with the GLH and everything else, and just drive forward and pick what you're passionate about and bring the world together in making it happen.
Thank you, Aileen, for sharing. That was a lot of info, and I've been learning a lot myself. So here I am back in the little window next to Aileen. I have a question for Aileen. So you saying that we can innovate and we can collaborate across borders, and one of the ways to do that is the GLH, Global Legal Hackathon. When would be the next edition for the replay viewers who might not be aware? How they can get involved in that, when is it happening, and where they can subscribe, and why it's important to do so when you are a lawyer or a law student, and also a technologist.
Okay, so I think there's three questions there. So the first one, so the Global Legal Hackathon right now, the date is set for 2019, for the end of February. So same weekend, the 22nd through through 24th this time around. And at this time, we're looking for funding and these kinds of other elements before we actually execute on that. So I would encourage you to actually stay tuned through globallegalhackathon.com. And if you hop onto there, you can put your email down for updates. And so you will be the first to know then when things actually get launched for 2019. And then your other two parts were how can or why should lawyers get involved, and why should technologists get involved? So
yeah, that's correct, because we've seen that it's there's a lot to do in terms of our experience, at least in Montreal. There was a lot to do in terms of
yes.
Educating our community about the importance to participate, and we would love to hear more your take on why lawyers and technologists would benefit from participating.
Yeah, so I'm really glad you asked that question, actually, because going into Global Legal Hackathon, every single host location's number one fear was we're not going to have enough developers, because developers are traditionally very adverse to the legal industry. And so on the technologist side, we actually found that quite a few technologists got involved, and it wasn't actually an issue at most host locations. And so in terms of, why they should get involved, or, why we think maybe there were actually so many here is the tech community actually loves to get involved in things that matter. Things that are big on a global scale or social level. They like to do things that actually matter and actually have a real impact. And so I think traditionally their aversion to the legal sector probably is because largely to do with the pace of it, and is caught up in the business and practice of the law, which is not necessarily where they want to go. And so technologists, I would argue, should get involved because they can have a real impact here. They can actually help to, build solutions for legal systems that make them better. And then for legal professionals, the tech space needs your insight. So in terms of what we're actually developing, if we don't have an understanding of the user end, or we don't have an understanding of, the legislation involved, or, the particular practice implementation, or, whatever it is, then technologists are going to build these funky tools that maybe look great and have all this cool stuff going on, but they don't actually solve the problem. And so lawyers should get involved for their input. Incredibly important.
And not only for the input, but also eventually to get to use those great tools inside the law firm. Because I'm pretty sure that those I'm pretty sure that those tools can really fast track what I call the competitive advantage for law firms. Do you want to talk a little bit about the challenges to implementing for law firms and how to go around those challenges? I'm thinking about maybe change of culture and change of mindset, but also in terms of adapting internal processes, because law firms have been, they've been here for a while, centuries, and now we are bringing technology inside, and that is kind of, it's almost like a revolution. So did you see some of those challenges, and what is your recommendation to get started for? Then now I'm talking really about law firms.
So that goes a bit outside of the GLH actually, and I have worked with legal tech companies that have been trying to sell into firms. I've been doing that for several years now. So it is a challenge for sure. And at least from what I've seen, so if you look at who is actually adopting these technologies and who isn't, it generally is these solo practices or small firms that are able to be completely agile in their adoptions. And they're, out there just running forward with these things. And in a lot of ways, actually, picking up business that is getting lost by the bigger firms as a result. And I think what that speaks to, so if we sort of like reverse engineer that equation and look at it and, ask, okay, why is that? I think that speaks to the density of the legacy systems that are in law firms currently. In addition, we have to realize these practices have hundreds and hundreds of, lawyers and attorneys that are used to these systems. And unless there's a real incentive for them to actually change over. And so what you mentioned about, cultural, mindset shift is incredibly important. Just to shift the mindset away from this idea that everything has to be incentive driven, and that there's, other elements, that can better their practice. That's a huge part of it. And understanding, so inviting the technologists in and, the innovators and these other stakeholders, if it's not to actually implement, have that openness to engage in a real way and understand and talk about, okay, if it's a blockchain solution or whatever it is that they're thinking of onboarding, how will that actually work once it's in the firm, and engaging all of the internal and external stakeholders in that open dialogue. Firms are starting to do that, but it's speeding up, but it needs to happen more.
Interesting. Well, that's I think it's a great strategy to have this, it's, as you say, like the open dialogue. And it's technology is all about, being open. Like we used to have open source. We still have open source, but the word open source and open source data, it's really coming from a tech world and and people who are in tech have this spirit of sharing openly in order to sort of speed up the learning within the community. And it's true, the legal field has a different approach, which is more about not sharing, and which is really the opposite. It's about, having a very closed approach, because we don't want to share because there's privacy, but also because that's the way we are. That's our behaviors in this field. So I like this. I like to sort of demystify who are those lawyers and who are those technologists, and that together they can actually do great stuff together. And that's what happened with the GLH, Global Legal Hackathon. The projects were absolutely mind-blowing. I was in New York for the final, and I got to see all of the pitches by the finalists, and that was absolutely incredible.
It was just
what
incredible.
The teams have built in just 6 months. So I think it's a great example, of what can be done. And now is the time for the last words, Aileen. I usually ask our speakers their best tips and advice to get started in legal tech. And what would be your best, your 3 tips, if you had 3 at the top of your mind, to encourage our community to get started and to go to dive more into legal tech? What would it be? I think the first one I know is join the GLH, but that I can say it for you.
Yes. Well, I wouldn't even just say necessarily just the Globe Legal Hackathon, but hackathons in general. So I mean, the Globe Legal Hackathon, while it was the first in many locations across the globe, it wasn't the first legal hackathon. And so these are things that happen regularly. And for example, in Chicago, August 4th, the ABA is putting on a Hack Justice hackathon. So hackathons, yes, absolutely, definitely participate, go out, engage. They're a very safe space to sort of dive in and start talking with technologists. So that that would be one. 2 would be, I'm getting all these kinds of pop-ups on my screen right now. 2, I would say, don't be intimidated. So a lot of people, when they go to dive into the tech space, they feel intimidated by developer types. And, sure, there are, there's sort of like a certain kind of characteristic, that many have, but it's not, it's more of a, like, I would just argue, everybody means well. So the legal tech industry in particular, the technologists that are involved in that space are incredibly friendly and engaging, and they want to do things. And so you might sense a kind of impatience, but that's really just because people who work in the tech space want to move quickly. So don't be intimidated. Dive right in. They want to hear from you. 3rd would be, I would say identify a niche area that speaks to you and what you do, whether that's, the practice that you have or a side project that you have that you're working on. Find the technology space, the companies that are working on those things, and engage with them, because you'll find that you have a lot more in common with them than you might otherwise think.
That's great. Definitely interesting. And actually, we have a question / a comment by one of the live viewers, Paolo, who say that some lawyers wrongly think that sharing info to public spaces will finally kill the profession itself. How to convince them of the contrary? Do you have any few ideas on how technology give added values? And thank you, Paolo, for the question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, and I've actually had legal professionals openly admit that to me as well. So that's a real concern. This is sort of an aggressive way of answering that question, but it just is the truth, that it's happening regardless. So these technologies are coming. There are startups coming up from the ground that are, it sounds terrible, but actually taking business away from the legal practice. Legislation is being written in various jurisdictions that isn't allowing law firms to, bring in senior executives that don't have a legal background. And, all of these things, I don't think that they should be saying, I don't think that should be an adverse thing for lawyers. I think it can actually be a positive thing, because the more that you open and share and work with technologists, the more of a role lawyers will have then in those things happening, and they're going to happen then correctly, as opposed to this like really abrasive, disruptive push of technology that's sort of like all upside down and backwards, and discombobulated. It's going to be accurate because it's informed by legal professionals. And so, I would just say embrace it. It's happening whether these things are going to, be shared or not. It just is happening. And it's better to embrace it and get involved, rather than working against it. I hope that didn't come off, wrong. Tessa, maybe you can weigh in here. Was that a helpful way of addressing that? Or?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, every idea is worth sharing. It's like this. It's a desert of ideas, and we need more and more. So I'm all into even aggressive ideas, and I totally agree as well that there is a lot of sort of fear in the profession that work is going to be taken away, and to some extent it is true. Some of the tasks will be automated. But
it's with new jobs coming. That's the thing.
Exactly.
And it's hard to see that because it's at the future, right? And so because those jobs aren't fully created yet, people are afraid because they don't know what's coming and it's not tangible just yet.
Exactly. So it's about investing in education, and one of the reasons for the Legal Creatives event is really about also bringing more education around the new type of jobs that we have to create ourselves in the legal fields in order to have a contribution and to have an impact in society. As you said, law is the code for society, so we will always need some but now we need some code to be actually coded inside technology. So it's a matter of finding a way to get that done. And we have more comments, actually. The live chat is getting quite fueled with comments. I hope you have a few more moments so I can share with you.
Sure, yeah.
We have actually Brandon from Dublin that says hi, and Paulo says thank you for the answer. Yeah, Brandon says, excellent. This convoluted, it's an excellent word to describe the attitude of big law in tech. There is actually someone from Middle East who is asking you, Aileen, what would be your advice for the Middle East and for people in the Middle East to be a good competitor next year in the GLH?
So we were well, first of all, on the last comment, I did want to just say too, the law is never going away. Right. So it doesn't matter, if robots take over or, whatever everybody's afraid of, is the law is never going away. And we will always need humans to understand the law and implement change in legislation. So, yes, so I definitely don't think the fear is warranted. And then for the Middle East specifically, we are incredibly fortunate actually to have an absolute powerhouse. Might I ask where exactly in the Middle East are you asking about?
It's in Egypt.
In Egypt. Oh, okay, great. So so we actually already have an interested host again for Egypt. So what I would suggest then is getting signed up to updates. And then if you're interested in hosting, you can put an application in for that. So, express that you can shoot us an email at info@globallegalhackathon.com. And there's a number of other ways to get involved. in terms of, wrangling the tech community. So in Egypt specifically, the fellow that hosted it for us, Ahmed, he is an absolute rock star. For him, it was, of course, a huge challenge, as I'm sure you can imagine and attest to. The legal innovation environment there is not rich yet. In fact, probably just beginning with the GLH. And so, yeah, I would suggest connecting with Ahmed and those that were involved on this last one, and figuring out how you can best get involved with them.
Actually, I think Ahmed I don't know if it's the Ahmed that you're talking about, but it's Ahmed who asked a question from Egypt about how to get more involved into the legal hackathon. And we have actually some more. I just want to be mindful of the time as well, because Aileen, we already over time. But here I have someone, Enke. Anke, actually, I've met Anke in Paris, and she's the director of the bar school in the northern part of France. And she's thanking you, Aileen, and she says, and you're right, lawyers need cultural change regarding the profession. And she's looking forward to the next edition of the GLH. And she's in Lille, in Paris. So, Anke, you have to sign up for the updates, and eventually you can host, and we can share all of the best tips for you to get started, Anke.
And thank you for jumping on and joining us today.
Well, that's fantastic. I think it's going to be a very nice way to close the last session of this global event. And again, I want to say thank you, Aileen, for making the time to share. We will have your video available as soon as possible on the website, so replay viewers can actually catch as well the great insights you've been sharing. And myself, I will have to re-watch the video another time because there was a lot of info that was very interesting. So myself, I've been learning a lot, and I look forward to seeing what's going to unfold for you and for the GLH and all of those great initiatives that you are leading. And live viewers, replay viewers, stay tuned for the next Global Legal Creative event. And also for the Legal Creative Academy, which is going to be launched in the summer by the latest, June 15. Why June 15? Because it's my birthday. So that's what we do on birthday. We are launching an academy. So feel free to stay tuned for this academy. You can also sign up to be the first to know when we go live at legalcreatives.com/p/academy. So make sure to have your email there so we can let you know once we get started. And by the way, we are also receiving application for speakers for course proposals. So everyone who is interested in submitting a course, contact me, tessa@legalcreatives.com. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Thank you, Aileen. Thank you to all of the speakers. And we'll see you very soon.
Great. Bye. And thank you.